Welcome to another episode of Surviving Social Distance. Today I have my good friend here, Saad, who I actually met on LinkedIn. Lives in London and he is going to share some gems with everyone. Saad has experience managing remote teams, managing entire product teams, and bringing them to the market. So, Saad, you want to kind of introduce yourself, talk a little bit about who you are and what your experience is?
Hey, Brennan. Great to be on the podcast. So my name is Saad Rathore, and I live in London, UK. And I've got background in program and project management, as well as product delivery and product management. Um, and for the last few years, I've been working fully remotely, leading globally diverse product teams and project delivery teams. Currently, I'm working at a healthcare startup, which is developing a video platform where patients can log in and hold their medical consultations without going to the doctor, to the hospital or the clinic. And it makes it more accessible, especially in our current times. And I'm happy to go through some of my journey of working through how I've managed to lead and run teams remotely, people I've never met before, and trying to form the teams. So I think, yeah, happy to go through that knowledge. Is there anything specific you wanted me to start with?
Yeah, first I think where is your team located? Where has your to talk about just like proximity to you? I mean, are these teams that you could easily meet up with in the office if you needed to, or where's your team located?
The majority of my team, the development team, as well as the UI and UX resources, are based in India. So they're 5.5 hours ahead in time zone, and they work remotely fully. So do I. The founder and the CEO are based in London, but again, I rarely meet them. We have video chats, we have phone calls, messenger meetings, and we all work remotely. And we've been doing that in this specific startup for 4 months. So I have a lot of experience of actually forming the team. When I joined, I was a third person after the founder and the CEO to join, and we had to hire the whole team remotely. Go through the whole process of going through implementing a Scrum Agile process, getting the team up to speed, starting the planning, the vision, putting in the process, daily meetings, everything from scratch, and running the whole team.
Wow, that's awesome. So, someone who's experienced running remote teams like yourself, obviously, I think a lot of the country, a lot of the world has been forced into remote work. So, what are some watchouts that you would kind of prepare people that are going to be new to remote work? What are some watchouts that you can kind of warn them of, and maybe how to get past them? Do you have like two or three of them that you could share with the community?
Yeah, I mean, remote working is a challenge for everyone. So I mean, this is not my first fully remote working role. I previously spent another 2 years doing fully remote working and and also co-working spaces with dispersed teams. So I've got a bit of experience, but initially there is going to be that lag. It's going to take a lot of getting used to. You cannot see people, you can't go up to them. So that's the challenge. But then you must be really disciplined with your time, I would say. Um, you need to be you need to have a focus. You need to have figure out your daily working pattern, what times you work best at, um, and you need to really communicate well with your team. So what is really allowed and showed me to do is improve my communication skills, which are really important, even face to face. What is the best what's the best method to communicate with someone? Is it email? Is it voice call? Is it WhatsApp? Is it Slack? uh, Google Docs presentations, and it's really ups your game on how to communicate and how to be brief. So I think that's a number one key point. Another one is that it's gonna be a challenge, right? It's gonna take a long time to sort of get up to speed with that. Working remotely, you need to be very disciplined. So you need to have a daily daily tasks. I would say you need to build up daily tasks, and that's something I do. You need to have your priorities set for your work as well as in your life. What's really important and what I found very useful is that at at the end of each day, I would go through things I need to things I've done in the current day with work as well as my personal life, and then what do I plan to do and what's the most important to me for tomorrow for work and my personal life, and then I'll build activities around that. So you really need to be careful on how you um, approach this in terms of building activities. What are the main tasks that you need to do for work? What are your priorities, and what isn't useful for your goal? And those things you need to really let go, because you cannot do everything every day.
Absolutely, you definitely can't do everything all day. And um, one thing that I heard you say is the communication piece and the planning piece. And me, obviously, being a manager myself, more of a people manager though, right now. Um, everyone has a different management style. What do you recommend for, like, how do you trust that your team's working? I'm sure that trust is established over time, but I'm sure there's a lot of people that are going to be working remotely right now, that might not have that trust level established. So how do you know that your people are working and getting things done, and vice versa? How do they know what your plan is?
Right. Okay. So what I found. So I'll give. There's 2 points to make here. Number one, if you're working with freelancers, people you have never worked with before, as I have done, and the experience of doing that, and that's something that you have to then go through the pain of. You must onboard them. You must go through your whole vision, what you're trying to achieve, and that initial steps takes 2 to 3 weeks. Like, you must really spend dedicated time. So when I was forming the product delivery team in my current place, we found developers, we onboarded them, we worked with them, we shared the vision, we went through a whole process. We went through what we're trying to build, when we need to build it by, and it took hours. Like, we were on planning meetings for 5 hours straight, on voice calls, on Google Meets, and Zoom chats and whatnot, really discussing this in length, and what they can do, what we need to do, how we need to plan it, what we should do first. And every day we would have 2 to 3 hour meetings minimum, like voice calls, going over things, planning product features, um, understanding what their technical skill sets is. And even then we had problems. Like, there was 2 people that we onboarded. We spent 2 to 3 weeks really discussing the details, getting everything up to speed, putting in the scrum process, doing very quick runs, and then 2 or 3 of them just dropped out. They ghosted, and that's a problem that people are going to realize. So really good freelancers and really good remote workers, they're going to be there. They're going to, over time, and this is when you work with them, you will see who's good and who's not. And that goes down to making those decisions. You realize over time, and that's a pain you have to take, to run this kind of teams, especially with freelance workers. You must put in the time, and you do really find awesome workers. At the same time, you have to put up the pain where people just drop out. They're not into the project. You don't hear anything back from them. You just spend 2 weeks getting them up to speed on the process or your product or your project, and that takes you away. But it's all about having that plan B, knowing that you are working towards something where you're at, and then seeing what else you can bring in. You've got your own contacts, the people you're currently working with. Do they know someone? Okay, now you need to go out and find someone. But at the same time, you don't drop everything. You continue building and working on the things you can work on. And I think that's something I found really important. um, the second point is, there's a lot of people who are not working with freelancers or forming new teams. So they already have a relationship with people. And to that point, it's you already have that professional relationship. You know that what work can be delivered and when and how. So it's much more about having that, honest conversations. You trust them, because they are in your organization. They are, part of your wider or bigger large organization. You know what they can do and what should be done. So it's more about trusting them to do the work, and if it's not done, and that's when you have that conversation.
Awesome, awesome, great points there. Um, I'm just sorry. I'm just so curious around the remote work. For me, currently a manager of people and teams, um, it's very important for us to build relationships with our teams, and make sure everyone knows that we care about, obviously we care about the work the results and the work that's done, but we also care about people as human beings. We really appreciate those human connections. I'm curious how you develop the human connections. How do you have like the water cooler conversations where you're kind of getting to know people? But how do you balance that with, obviously the development conversations and the results, the conversations around the products you're creating? Does
Right.
that
So
make sense?
right at the start of forming a team, or even with existing teams, it's more about introducing yourself. Who are you? So right at the start, um, in my current company, as we are forming it, when we were onboarding new people and bringing new team members in, um, we introduce each other. We spend an hour talking about what we do, what are our interests, where do we live. We've got to starting to know each other. How do you like working? What are your skill sets? But more, just more than that, you know, who are you? Where what are your interests? Um, what are the things you do? And that over time develops. So as you then having these daily stand-ups and sprint planning meetings, or product delivery meetings, and acceptance criteria meetings and testing, over time you get to know about their personal life, especially when you're working remotely, because you're juggling your normal life, your personal life, with your work. And you know uh, what I've learned to do, and as well as the teams I'm working with learn to do, is that we do our work, but it doesn't mean that we have a set 9 to 5, or 9 to 7, or whatever it may be. We have our chunks of work, and in that time we can also do our own personal, sort of personal errands and personal tasks that we need to do around our life. And you get to learn about other people, what they're doing. A colleague of mine got married recently, and he was talking about that, and we got to learn about his culture and how he's getting married, and when he's what he's planned and where he's going for the honeymoon. So you do develop that over time, and people share that. So it's not, oh, there's just a video call and you talk about the work and say, okay, I'll have the email or document to you. You actually do build these relationships over time. um, and people do share, because they've got their own personal life, and they're also working remotely.
Yes. Okay. Great points. Yeah. I thought that was a big part of it. We do like team events and outings, and just trying to visualize how that's done remotely. I was having a tough time understanding that, but yeah, you're right. Just naturally working together, I'm sure you create some pretty solid bonds with your remote teams.
So an example I can give you of that is, so the colleague of mine who was getting married in India,
Yeah.
we actually did a live stream of his wedding. We couldn't be there, but we did a live stream. He shared photos, so we were there virtually.
That's so cool. That is so that's so cool, man. See that shows the type of teams that you manage, man, and the culture that you create as a leader. I love that. Um, so we're coming up on 15 minutes, but I really want to make sure, and you gave some great tips, but I really want to make sure that maybe we touch on the technology piece. Can you take a couple minutes just to kind of talk about what your favorite technologies are, or your technological tools are, and how you use them within your remote teams?
Right. So we use the cloud, obviously, because cloud tools, because we have to, and we're building the whole business to be on the cloud, and it is on the cloud. We run it on the cloud, and all our product, which is a iOS platform, Android platform, and web interface, are all built open source and on the cloud. We're using Google Cloud at the moment, um, and we to be productive, we're using G Suite. And all the tools within the G Suite. So sheets, docs, presentations, and we built a whole process on around Scrum, on G Suite, on Google Sheets, and our Google Docs. And I manage the whole process daily on our daily stand-ups, sprint planning meetings, the product backlog, the user stories. Everything is recorded in using G Suite. All the artifacts, the UI, the UX development, and I managed the whole Scrum process. So we didn't want to be tied into one tool, because we were a startup, right? And we don't have time to. At the time, we didn't want to be limited to one tool and then realize, oh, this tool does this, but we can't do X with it. So we built the whole process from scratch in Google Sheets and different G Suite components. So we have, we can build it out and then analyze a tool that we'll actually maybe need for specific things. So right now, um, the product vision, the user stories, the product backlog, um, the sprint planning meeting, the task assignment, completion, the retrospective, the acceptance criteria. Everything I do is managed using Google Sheets and Google Docs, and that process is available to everyone. So everyone can see, so it's a virtual board, basically a team board, because we're not in a physical location, and that basically represents a team board. Everyone can access the user stories, the current tasks, the completion rate, and any questions. We have a daily stand up, which we hold on Google Meet, do video calls and screen shares. We communicate using Telegram and WhatsApp, and that's our main communication tools. Anything we come quickly, we're doing something else outside in our personal life, we can answer email, we can answer quickly on Telegram messaging. And this happened just this morning actually. I was We're creating some new templates. The UI designer had created some new templates, and I quickly reviewed them on my phone. I wasn't logged in. I was doing some personal stuff, but I could quickly get back to him with some updates, and he quickly got back to me all through Telegram.
That's so awesome. That's so awesome. Well, Saad, thank you so much for getting on and sharing your tips today, man. Um, I will definitely put your LinkedIn URL in the show notes. And so, everyone that's listening, if you want to follow up with Saad, shoot him a DM on LinkedIn, connect with him. Anything else you want to add before we hop off?
I mean, it's awesome to be, sharing insights, and I'll also, really enjoyed being on this podcast. And there's so many things we can talk about, so I'd be love to come back and, really go into other things as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think we're going to do a Saad part two for our guests shortly. So thanks for joining us for another episode of Surviving Social Distance.